Hespiembo du THS pesti, wuchef kalas hiam oulivi chista asis biand lias abu THS pesti, wuif kalas hiam outhi honesty. Steve Harvey had presided over Family Feud for more than 2 decades, navigating thousands of family dynamics and witnessing virtually every conceivable variation of human behavior under the pressure of game show competition. However, nothing in his extensive experience could have prepared him for what would unfold on a warm May afternoon in 2024. The studio audience settled into their seats with anticipation. The familiar upbeat music filled the air, creating an atmosphere of excitement and possibility, and 2 families stood ready to compete in what everyone assumed would be another entertaining episode featuring the customary mix of laughter and competitive spirit, and perhaps a few memorable incorrect answers that would showcase Steve's legendary comedic reactions. The Hamilton family from Ohio faced off against the Lee family from Arizona, both teams projecting enthusiasm and family solidarity as they took their positions on the brightly lit stage. What began as a seemingly typical family game show would transform into one of the most dramatic revelations in television history, as a husband's fabricated narrative about his educational and professional background would be exposed by his wife's devastating correction, forcing a public reckoning about the foundation of deception upon which their entire marriage had been built. The Hamilton family consisted of 5 members who presented themselves as an accomplished, upwardly mobile unit when they first appeared on the Family Feud stage. Leading the team was 45-year-old Christopher Hamilton, a middle management executive at a logistics company in Cleveland who carried himself with the careful confidence of someone who had spent years constructing and maintaining a particular image. His expensive suit, articulate manner, and professional demeanor communicated success and educational attainment. Standing beside him was his wife of 19 years, Patricia Hamilton, a 43-year-old woman whose sharp intelligence and meticulous attention to detail immediately distinguished her from typical game show contestants. Patricia worked as a certified public accountant at a respected firm, a profession requiring both technical expertise and the ability to identify discrepancies and inconsistencies in financial records and documentation. Their 3 children completed the primary family unit. 17-year-old Andrew stood on the stage preparing for college applications and decisions about his educational future, while 14-year-old Madison navigated the complexities of high school with typical adolescent self-awareness, and 11-year-old Grace displayed excitement about appearing on television. Completing the team was Christopher's younger sister, 40-year-old Jennifer Hamilton, who worked as a dental hygienist and had maintained close relationship with her brother despite living in different cities. Patricia Hamilton had been enthusiastic when Christopher suggested they apply to appear on Family Feud. She had viewed the opportunity as a chance to create positive family memories and to celebrate their accomplishments together. Patricia had worked diligently to support Christopher's career advancement over the years, managing their household finances carefully while raising their children and maintaining her own demanding professional responsibilities. She had believed the narrative Christopher had presented about his background, accepting his claims about graduating from a prestigious university and about his professional credentials that had supposedly qualified him for his management position. What Patricia did not know was that this day would expose the devastating reality that Christopher had fabricated significant portions of his educational history and professional qualifications, and that the foundation of trust upon which she had built their marriage and family life had been corrupted by systematic deception that extended back to the beginning of their relationship. If you have ever wondered how foundational lies about identity and accomplishment can undermine entire relationships built upon false premises, and how one moment of public exposure can force acknowledgement of deception that has been maintained through years of careful construction and management, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of the importance of honesty about fundamental aspects of identity and the devastating consequences when relationships are built upon fabricated narratives that cannot withstand scrutiny or verification. The game began with typical enthusiasm and energy that characterized Family Feud episodes. The Lee family played with genuine warmth and mutual encouragement, celebrating correct answers and supporting one another through inevitable mistakes with grace and good humor. The Hamilton family participated competently, with Christopher demonstrating strong performance and strategic thinking while Patricia provided steady support to their children and maintained careful attention to the game dynamics. The first indication that problems were developing emerged during Steve Harvey's customary pregame banter with the families. Steve asked each team to share something interesting about themselves, and when he reached Christopher Hamilton, Christopher provided what appeared to be an impressive introduction designed to establish his credentials and accomplishments. Christopher stated that he held an MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, that he had built his career through dedication to excellence and continuous professional development, and that appearing on Family Feud with his accomplished family represented the culmination of years of hard work and strategic planning. The introduction seemed appropriate and unremarkable for a successful professional appearing on a national game show. However, Patricia Hamilton's reaction to Christopher's claims about his educational background was immediate and visible to anyone paying close attention. Her expression shifted from supportive interest to something that resembled shock and confusion, and her body language communicated tension and disbelief regarding what Christopher had just stated about his academic credentials. Steve Harvey, with his finely tuned ability to read interpersonal dynamics developed through years of working with families in high-pressure situations, immediately noticed Patricia's reaction to Christopher's introduction. However, the game format required proceeding with the family introductions, and Steve moved on to other team members while making a mental note of the tension he had observed. The game progressed through several rounds, with both families demonstrating solid knowledge of survey responses and accumulating points through correct answers. However, the earlier tension between Christopher and Patricia became increasingly apparent as the episode continued. During the third round, when Steve asked a question about things people lie about on resumes, Christopher provided an answer with notable nervousness that suggested the topic touched on something personally relevant. Patricia's expression during this exchange communicated barely suppressed distress and anger. The situation reached a critical point during a break in taping when Patricia approached one of the production assistants and requested to speak with Steve Harvey privately before the game resumed. The production team facilitated this conversation, recognizing that Patricia's obvious distress suggested something significant beyond normal game show dynamics. During this private conversation, Patricia revealed to Steve that Christopher had just lied on national television about his educational background, and that she had only recently discovered through documentation required for their son's college applications that Christopher had never attended Northwestern University or earned an MBA from any institution. Patricia explained to Steve that she had discovered the truth 3 weeks earlier when Andrew's college counselor had requested information about family educational history for scholarship applications. Patricia had asked Christopher for documentation of his MBA to include in the materials, and Christopher had initially claimed he could not locate his diploma due to a recent office reorganization. When Patricia had persisted in her request, eventually contacting Northwestern directly to request verification for the scholarship application, she had been informed that no one by Christopher's name had ever been enrolled in their MBA program during the time period he claimed to have attended. Patricia had confronted Christopher privately with this information, and he had eventually admitted that he had fabricated his MBA credentials when they first met 19 years earlier, claiming the degree to impress her and to improve his professional prospects. Christopher had maintained this deception throughout their entire marriage, allowing Patricia to believe he possessed educational qualifications he had never earned. Patricia explained to Steve that hearing Christopher repeat this lie on national television after she had confronted him privately about the deception had made clear to her that he had no intention of acknowledging the truth publicly or of taking responsibility for the systematic dishonesty that had corrupted the foundation of their marriage. Steve Harvey recognized the gravity of what Patricia had revealed and the impossible position she found herself in, having to choose between supporting her husband's continued deception or exposing the truth in a public forum that would create permanent documentation and widespread awareness of his fabricated credentials. Steve made a decision to address the situation directly rather than allowing the deception to stand unchallenged. Understanding that Patricia's distress and the fundamental nature of Christopher's lie required intervention that prioritized truth over entertainment or avoiding uncomfortable confrontation. When taping resumed, Steve Harvey made an announcement that would shock everyone present except Patricia, who had requested his intervention. Steve stated that before the game continued, there was a matter that needed to be addressed regarding accuracy and honesty in the introductions that had been provided. Steve explained that he had been informed that one of the contestants had misrepresented their educational background during the introduction segment, and that maintaining integrity required correcting this misinformation before proceeding. Steve turned to Christopher Hamilton and asked him directly to clarify his educational credentials, specifically whether he had in fact earned an MBA from Northwestern University as he had claimed during his introduction. The studio fell into uncomfortable silence as everyone present recognized that something serious was occurring beyond normal game show interactions. Christopher's face transformed through rapid succession of expressions including shock, panic, and calculation as he processed what was happening and attempted to formulate a response. Christopher initially attempted to maintain his fabricated narrative, stating that he had indeed attended Northwestern and that there must be some confusion about the verification process Patricia had mentioned. However, Steve cut through this evasion by stating clearly that Northwestern University had confirmed they had no record of Christopher ever being enrolled in their MBA program, and that this verification had been obtained through official channels that left no ambiguity about the truth. Faced with incontrovertible evidence and public questioning that left no room for continued deception, Christopher finally acknowledged that he had lied about his educational credentials. He attempted to minimize the significance of his deception, suggesting that many people embellish their resumes and that his actual work performance and career success demonstrated his capabilities regardless of formal educational credentials. Christopher stated that he had made a mistake in claiming the MBA, but that this did not diminish his genuine accomplishments or his value as a professional and family man. What happened next would demonstrate Patricia Hamilton's strength and her absolute refusal to allow Christopher to minimize or rationalize away the profound betrayal his deception represented. Patricia stepped forward and addressed the studio audience, the cameras, and most importantly her husband, with a clarity and controlled fury that commanded immediate attention from everyone present. She stated that Christopher's lie about his educational background was not a simple resume embellishment or harmless exaggeration, but rather a foundational deception that had corrupted their entire marriage from its inception. Patricia explained that she had met Christopher at a professional networking event 19 years earlier, and that his claimed MBA from a prestigious institution had been a significant factor in her initial attraction to him and her assessment of his character and potential as a partner. She had believed she was building a life with someone who valued education, intellectual achievement, and honesty about credentials and qualifications. Patricia stated that discovering Christopher had fabricated these fundamental aspects of his identity had forced her to question everything she thought she knew about the man she had married and the foundation upon which their family had been built. Patricia continued by addressing the impact of Christopher's deception on their children, particularly on Andrew, who was in the process of college applications and who had been raised to value academic achievement and honest representation of accomplishments. She explained that Christopher's willingness to lie about educational credentials while simultaneously emphasizing to their children the importance of integrity and honest achievement created a profound hypocrisy that would damage their trust in their father and their understanding of what values actually mattered in their family. Patricia then made a statement that shocked everyone present even more than her initial exposure of Christopher's lie. She announced that she had consulted with a divorce attorney following her discovery of Christopher's fabricated credentials, and that she was seriously considering ending their marriage based on the fundamental dishonesty that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. Patricia stated that she could not continue in a marriage built upon deception, and that Christopher's attempt to maintain his lie, even after being confronted privately, demonstrated that he valued his false image more than he valued honest relationship with his wife and children. The studio remained in stunned silence as Patricia finished speaking. Christopher stood looking diminished and isolated, his carefully constructed image completely destroyed by the exposure of his fabricated credentials. The Hamilton children displayed varying emotional responses, with Andrew appearing particularly devastated by learning that his father had lied about educational achievements while pushing him to pursue academic excellence with complete honesty. Steve Harvey addressed the situation with the seriousness and moral clarity it required. He spoke directly to Christopher, explaining that lying about fundamental aspects of your identity and maintaining that deception for 19 years represented a betrayal of trust so profound that it corrupted everything built upon that false foundation. Steve emphasized that educational credentials were not merely resume items, but rather reflected investment in learning, intellectual development, and honest representation of qualifications to employers and partners who made decisions based on trust in the accuracy of information provided. Steve then turned to Patricia and spoke to her with respect and validation. He told her that discovering such fundamental deception after 19 years of marriage would devastate anyone, and that her decision to expose the truth rather than continue supporting Christopher's lie demonstrated courage and commitment to honesty even when that commitment created painful consequences. Steve explained that while the public nature of the exposure was unusual, Patricia's choice reflected her recognition that allowing Christopher to continue deceiving others would make her complicit in his dishonesty and would teach her children that maintaining comfortable fictions was more important than speaking truth. Steve addressed the Hamilton children with compassion, explaining that they had learned something important about the difference between genuine achievement and fabricated credentials, and about the long-term consequences of dishonesty regarding fundamental aspects of identity. He emphasized that their father's deception reflected his own insecurities and poor judgment rather than anything they had done wrong, and that they should continue pursuing their education and careers with the integrity their mother had modeled through her refusal to support false narratives. Steve made a decision about how the show would proceed. He announced that the game would not continue given the circumstances, and that neither family would receive prize money from the episode. However, he stated that he would personally provide $5,000 to Patricia Hamilton to help her with legal expenses if she chose to pursue divorce, and to support her and her children as they navigated the consequences of Christopher's deception being exposed. The production crew facilitated the Hamilton family's departure from the studio, providing separate transportation for Patricia and the children so they would not have to travel with Christopher after what had occurred. Steve Harvey personally ensured that Patricia had contact information for family therapists who could help her children process the revelation about their father's deception, and for legal resources if she decided to end her marriage based on the foundational dishonesty that had been exposed. When news of what had occurred spread in the weeks following the taping, the response was overwhelmingly supportive of Patricia's decision to expose Christopher's lie rather than continue supporting his fabricated narrative. Commentary from career counselors, human resources professionals, and ethics experts emphasized that lying about educational credentials represented not just personal dishonesty, but potential fraud that could have legal and professional consequences, depending on how those false credentials had been used in employment contexts. The incident sparked broader conversations about the prevalence of resume fraud, the importance of verification of credentials, and the long-term consequences when relationships are built upon fundamental deceptions about identity and achievement. Experts noted that unlike lies about preferences or minor biographical details, Fabricating educational credentials corrupted the foundation of trust necessary for genuine partnership because it demonstrated willingness to deceive about core aspects of identity and qualification. Patricia Hamilton used the financial support Steve Harvey provided to retain legal counsel and to pursue divorce from Christopher based on fraud and fundamental breach of trust. In her divorce filings, she detailed how Christopher's fabricated credentials had influenced her decision to marry him, and how the discovery of his deception had destroyed her ability to trust anything he claimed about his past, his present, or his future intentions. The divorce proceedings included investigation into whether Christopher's false credentials had been used to obtain his current employment, with potential implications for his professional standing and income. Christopher Hamilton faced severe professional consequences when his employer learned that he had misrepresented his educational qualifications during the hiring process. The company conducted an investigation and ultimately terminated his employment based on resume fraud and violation of professional ethics standards. Christopher's attempts to find new employment were significantly hampered by the widespread awareness of his fabricated credentials and the public nature of the exposure on Family Feud. The Hamilton children worked with family therapists to process the betrayal of learning their father had maintained such fundamental deception throughout their lives, while simultaneously teaching them to value honesty and authentic achievement. The therapeutic work focused on helping them understand that Christopher's deception reflected his own character flaws and insecurities, rather than providing a model for their own behavior or diminishing the importance of genuine educational accomplishment and honest credential representation. Steve Harvey spoke about the incident in general terms during subsequent interviews, explaining that his decision to facilitate Patricia's exposure of Christopher's lie had been driven by his recognition that allowing fabricated credentials to stand unchallenged would make the show complicit in deception and would deny Patricia the validation she deserved for her courage in speaking truth. Steve emphasized that while the public nature of the exposure was dramatic, the fundamental dishonesty involved was so profound that it required direct confrontation rather than diplomatic avoidance. 2 years after the incident, Patricia Hamilton had rebuilt her life with clarity about the importance of honesty in relationships and professional contexts. She had advanced in her accounting career, taking on additional responsibilities that reflected her expertise in verification and accuracy. Her relationship with her children had strengthened through their shared processing of Christopher's deception and their collective commitment to building futures based on authentic achievement rather than fabricated credentials. The lasting significance of Patricia's decision to call out Christopher's lie extended beyond the immediate impact on their family. The incident became referenced in discussions about the importance of credential verification, the long-term consequences of foundational deception in relationships, and the courage required to expose dishonesty even when doing so destroys carefully maintained images and creates painful disruption. Patricia's refusal to continue supporting Christopher's fabricated narrative demonstrated that some deceptions are so fundamental that they cannot be overlooked or minimized regardless of time invested or consequences created by exposure. As we reflect on this powerful story, it serves as a reminder that lies about fundamental aspects of identity and achievement corrupt the foundation of relationships built upon those false premises, that maintaining deception for years does not diminish the betrayal but rather compounds it through sustained dishonesty, and that exposing truth sometimes requires public confrontation that destroys carefully constructed images but creates the possibility for genuine accountability and authentic relationship building based on actual rather than fabricated accomplishments. If this story has reminded you of the importance of honesty about educational credentials and professional qualifications, the devastating impact of foundational deception in relationships, or the courage required to expose lies that have been maintained for years through careful construction and management, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who might benefit from understanding that fabricating fundamental aspects of identity represents betrayal that corrupts everything built upon those false premises, and that speaking truth about such deception, however painful the consequences, serves integrity and authentic relationship building more than continued support of comfortable fictions that cannot withstand verification or scrutiny.